Hi, I'm Hillary with Wise Hearts Connect, and today we are going through the different meridian systems which connect with the organ systems in Chinese medicine. And so today we're on the 12th meridian, which in my 5-element system is the spleen meridian, the last meridian of the body. And what I can say about the spleen meridian is it starts in the toe and it travels up the inside of the leg, then it jogs over and comes up the sides of the abdomen up to the armpit. Actually, just below the armpit is where the last accessible point is. And the spleen is very much partnered with the stomach meridian, so it's responsible for thinking and processing information, but also it has a really significant relationship with blood. And the idea is that the stomach processes that digest the information, the nutrients, and then it gives the useful stuff to the spleen. And the spleen then makes blood, which is considered to be our liquid consciousness, our precious fluid. So the spleen is responsible for making the food for the blood and also taking that nutrient, the nutrient information, and making it into energy. So blood and qi is what the spleen is responsible for. There's also this concept that the spleen is responsible for holding things up. So the blood, if you will, circulates through our bodies, but if a person is really low energy or doesn't have enough spleen energy, there can be exhaustion, also more dramatic things like prolapses and things falling down. So a prolapsed uterus or a varicose veins would be indicative of prolapses or not enough spleen energy to hold things in their right place. Something else I can tell you about the spleen meridian is one of its most beautiful points actually is the last point. They're all important points, but the last point on the spleen meridian is just about 4 fingers. If you put your fingers into your armpits and just about 4 fingers below, there's an acupuncture point in between some ribs there, in between the ribs, and that's called spleen 21, or the name of the point is great enveloping. And so many of the acupuncture points have this beautiful imagery that goes along with them, and this one is certainly one as well. And it conjures the image of a baby being held in a womb. So the womb is this quiet, sacred, beautiful space in which to grow and flourish. And spleen 21 is called great enveloping. As an acupuncture point, it actually is also called the junction point of all the other junction points, meaning that it has an effect, that particular point has an effect on all of the different meridians. It's with one point you can touch the whole entire body. On a practical level, sometimes I will use that point for a person who maybe feels out of sorts or doesn't feel like they're properly being held, or maybe they're working through some birth trauma and they feel like they need to feel supported and nurtured and held. So that point, great enveloping, is very much that energetic being held by one's mother, and also could be a point that's very energetically similar to just being embraced, being held, hugging a person, having a nice, warm, long, nourishing hug that regulates your biorhythms. And I think they even talk about that, how being hugged releases endorphins and is really a great reset for feeling nurtured and acknowledged and held. The tactile holding is so essential. The spleen also has a real impact on our thinking process, not unlike the stomach. The spleen is responsible for emotions like worry. And so the suggestion is that if we can not worry, if we can trust, and if we can be held or feel held, that maybe we don't have to carry these burdens or worry about things as much as we do. So that's a little bit about the spleen meridian, which is largely misunderstood in Western medicine, but in Chinese medicine, it's so important that it gets its own whole pathway and meridian. And the function is to nourish the body, make sure that the nutrients get all throughout the body where they need to go, and that essential experience of being held and nurtured and hugged is much associated with the spleen meridian. Tell me about your experience being hugged and held, and tell me your experience with worry and prolapses, perhaps even. That's a little bit about the spleen meridian.